Welcome to Gear, and in today's Gear segment, we're going to talk a little bit about, what are we talking about? SD cards.
Micro SD cards.
Micro SD cards. So we're going to talk about which micro SD card is the best for your camera and how to go about choosing the micro SD card for, and SD card actually too, not just
SD
micros.
as well, yeah.
How to go about choosing the best card for your particular use. Does it sound good?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is that what we're doing?
Well,
all right.
I mean, your particular use, or I don't know.
Well, we'll start with why would you want to do that, actually? Why would you care about what card? Usually, whenever you buy a camera or a drone or whatever, it comes with a card. And,
right.
And I think a lot of people doesn't realize. I have this all the time, actually. And we have a friend, you know Andy.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Hi, Andy.
So Andy, I'm not trying to name call or call him out, but he was one of the people actually. But over the years, there were a lot of people like this that would come to me or ask me or reach out on a Facebook and say, hey, how come your videos look crisper from the same drone than mine? Why are mine all mushy or it looks almost kind of out of focus or they're just compressed? And this is where, and I learned the same lesson actually, that the right speed of the card is what actually matters the most.
Right.
So we're not going to make this episode about, hey, go there and buy this card or go there and buy this card, because we want to make things timeless.
Yeah, we want to talk more about what makes a card do what it does.
Yeah, so we want to teach the man to fish. So we're going to teach you how to choose the best card for your particular camera and your particular situation. What is it to look for? Do you know what SD card means, by the way?
I have not a clue. I've never even thought about it.
Secure digital.
Secure digital.
Secure digital.
Okay.
That's what it means. Just out of fun fact.
Really?
Yeah. Look, yeah, totally. So before we get to the secure digital cards, I want to talk a little bit about the right speeds and the way the cameras are rated and the way they rate the cards, right? Because that's where most of the confusion comes from. So when you're choosing the memory card, you want to pretty much match the right speed of the camera, of the card, to the right speed, to the bit rate of the camera. So the camera doesn't have trouble compressing the video or it doesn't skip frames. Because what's happening, why things sometimes look like they're just, a little bit too compressed or, out of focus, blurry, is because the camera, the right speed think about it as a funnel, right? So you're trying to fill a bottle through a funnel or a cup through a funnel, and you're pouring the water in there, and eventually it's going to overflow, right? It's got to go somewhere. So the narrow part of the funnel, that's the right speed of the card. That's what limits your flow. So what you actually retain on the card in the cup that you're pouring the water in really depends on the width of the funnel, right? So that's your right speed. And to measure the right speed of the card, people use, or the companies usually use megabytes per second.
Okay,
right?
megabytes.
MB, capital M, capital B. Now, to set or the specs on the bit rates on the cameras are usually written in megabits.
Now, why would they even do that?
I have no idea why they did that. Just to confuse the heck out of everybody. It seems like an entry limitation to the industry. If you don't care enough to figure it out, you're just let outside of the secrets. So here's how megabits and megabytes work. So again, it's the megabytes for the cards, and it's the write speed, not the read speed. That's important. The read speed, that's what's usually de-advertised. That's what they write on all the cards.
And that's more for the playback, right?
That's more for, when you're trying to dump your card into the computer. So that's how quickly you can do that, or that's for the playback, or if you're trying to use it as a storage, or if you're using it in a phone and you need a quick access to it because you have some video files, then the read speed, but the write speed is what's important. And the confusing part is about how the camera makers and how the card makers actually define the speeds.
Right.
So card makers define it in megabytes per second. The camera makers in megabytes per second. Megabits per second. See? M,
See right
lower
there?
caps B. Capital B, bytes. Lower cap B, bit. Yeah.
But isn't even the abbreviation they use on the camera Mbps?
Yeah, but it's the lower caps B. Yeah.
Right.
So what that means, what's the conversion rate, right? So 1 megabyte is 8 megabits.
Okay.
1 byte is 8 bits. Okay. So if, let's take a Phantom 4 Pro, for example, or any Mavic probably I didn't look at the specs for that, but to shoot in 4K, to write in 4K, the camera will the speed or the bit rate, and the bit rate, okay, let me back up.
How many frames per second?
What is the bit rate on the camera and why does it matter first? Everybody, when you look at the cameras or the TVs and all that, the buzzword is HD or Ultra HD or 4K, right? Well, but that doesn't really tell you about the quality of the video. All it does, it's tell you, it's the dimension of the video.
That's all.
It's 1080, 4K, dimensions of the video. It's not the quality of the video. The quality of the video depends on the bit rate, right? And just to put this in perspective a bit, a quality DVD is about 6 megabytes per second.
Okay.
Very low. Anything you watch if you watch an HD video that's streamed on the web, it's streaming you'll be lucky if you get it at 2 megabytes per second.
Right.
So it's very low. If you think about it, the card, write speed, the cameras, so now we'll go to the cameras, right? So a Phantom 4 camera or even the X5 actually, they can write on the microSD card up to 100 megabits per second.
Yeah.
100 megabits per second.
And that's 4K, it's 60 frames per second.
That's 4K, yeah, or 5.2K on the X5S actually.
Yeah,
Yep.
right,
yeah,
right.
On the card. We're not talking about the SSD drive. We're talking about a microSD card. So they'll be spec'd at 100 megabits per second. Divided by 8, and you come to roughly about 12.5 megabytes per second. And so the write speed on the card that you're looking for to be able to write the 4K on needs to be at least 12.5 megabytes per second or more.
Okay. So
Make
now
sense?
back that up into megabits.
So times 8. Times 8.
I don't want to do the math right now.
Well, it's 100, right?
Yeah,
100 divided by 8 is 12.5. Times 8 is 100. You're back to that number. Okay, so every time you're looking for a card, look at the max write speed that you're gonna need the card to be able to that the camera can put out, right? And remember, those are in megabits per second. You divide it by 8, and you get the minimal write speed that you need the card to be capable of in megabytes per second.
Right.
Does it make sense? Cool. So now, how can you tell which card is or how fast, which card is fast and how does that work? So that's been a little bit of a jungle because obviously just like any other technology, it evolves, right? So now there are different classes. So they recently actually, and by then, there is this thing called SD Card Alliance actually, or SD Alliance. We'll put a link in the show notes for that because they have some great, and that's an organization that's kind of trying to standardize this. So, if the card says this or has this symbol, this is what it means. These are the minimal, whether it's the write speed, read speed, these are the minimal parameters for the card that the card has to have in order to have this mark on it. Make sense?
Yeah.
So they're trying to standardize this. And one of the standards was the UHS, ultra high speed. Now they're up to, I think, UHS 2 now. But what they recently introduced, and we'll put a list. We're looking at the picture right now. We'll put it in the show notes. So you guys just click the link. If you're listening to this on a podcast, the link is right down in the show notes. If you're looking at this on YouTube or our blog, the link is right below there. Or I'll put the picture below here on the blog, actually. So you can kind of follow along. But they recently introduced this video speed class, right? And the way you can tell you have the video speed class card, they have a little V's on them. So video class card and the V speed, the video write speed, is the minimal speed that it can sustain while shooting the video, write speed. And there are a few different classifications. V6, which is your 6 megabytes per second. V10 would be 10 megabytes per second. The V10, sometimes you'll see the U1. It's the same thing. That's the UHS speed class. Speed class is 1. At 30 megabytes per second, you will see a little V30 symbol on the card, and that tells you that the card is capable of writing at 30 megabytes per second. So again, if you think about it, if you're using the X5, X5S, Phantom, whatever, to shoot in 4K, they need 100 megabits per second divided by 8. You need 12.5 megabytes. A 30 megabyte per second card can easily handle whatever you need to handle from those kinds of cameras. So that's the formula. That's how you calculate it. Now, I've heard there were some V90 micro SDs. You definitely see V60s, V90s probably in the regular size SD card world for the, like the GH4.
They're much more common there in the larger.
Yeah. But I've tried looking for some V60s or V90s at this point, what's out there in the market. And the only ones I ran into was this card by SanDisk. Extreme Ultra Pro, something like that. Extreme Pro Ultra. It's a black card with the red writing on it, but it does not really have. It says in the specs on the B&H side that it's capable of writing up to 95, but again, that's up to. The V rating is the minimum speed, but it does not have a V rating on it. So I wonder how it is, whether they're not, because
can we talk about that for just a second? Because I have a question.
Yeah.
So if I'm shooting at 4K, 60 frames per second. Now I'm at 100 megabits per second write speed from the camera.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what happens to the 5 megabits that it's not it can't support?
It compresses.
Or the 10?
It compresses. It will compress. So you know how if you use a slow card, well, you may get a warning actually from the unit that the write is.
The
card is too slow. And what's happening at that time, it's not only compressing, but it may start skipping frames at that point because, again, your funnel is overflowing. Now
so it's deciding. I wonder how it decides what to kick out.
Well, what to kick out? It looks just like any other compression. It looks at what looks similar. So if you're flying over the scene where you have a bunch of, maybe a golf course. And, there's a bunch of texture, so there's a difference between your sky, your, woods, your grass, but then looks at the grass and says, okay, that looks kind of similar to each other, so it's just going to melt it together into these bigger blobs, and you'll see it. It's almost like it's moving. You call it the compression elements, and that's what happens. That's where it goes. So it gets squeezed. So it looks at the 4 pixels that are close to the similar color, and it makes them one color. That's how it gets through it.
Okay.
And then it skips frames if it cannot keep up. Yeah, we don't want that. We
don't
want any of that. Another thing, and so that's just a video consideration, right? So now think about shooting stills. Cool. So we have drone cameras that are capable of shooting bracketed shots. So you're trying to, or bursts, 20 picture bursts, on the X5S now, on some of the other units. You got to be able to write it fast. Right. I don't want to wait there. If I'm shooting a pano, and let's say I have a longer glass at 25 millimeter on the X5S, and I'm shooting a sunset, and I'm doing some big pano, that could be 30, 40 pictures. And
easily.
The light changes, in that time. And if you're doing bracketed, then you're waiting for a long time. So the faster the card, the quicker, it gets written, the faster you can move to the next picture. Added benefit in your workflow, on the picture side, photography side, the cards dump into your computer much faster, so you don't have to wait there for, half an hour to copy a card to a computer. And for the video, because stuff is not as compressed, you actually have more detail that you can recover in a post. So it helps you with the workflow and it helps you with the quality. So that is why you want to match or exceed the card's write speed to exceed your camera's maximum bitrate. Okay, and again, it's megabits for the camera, and 8 megabits make 1 megabyte, and that's how they spec the cards. Very easy. All right, teach a man to fish.
Thank you very much for that lesson. That was very helpful.
You are very welcome. I hope this was helpful to you guys too. And you know what? For this and some of the other gear segments, you can head over to our blog at dronephotographypodcast.com. If you have any questions about this, let us know. You can write them in the comments down here, right beneath.
And we'll get right to answering them too.
And we'll get right to answering them right here on our show. You can ask us whatever you want. We'll answer whatever we want. And please subscribe.
Well,
and if you're listening to this anywhere, we can rate and review the podcast. And if this helped you out, we would really appreciate if you could help us out and rate and review our show.